I could see straight through God allowing me to lose my ministry. I never got credit for my ministry. I never got credit for doing anything. I could see straight through this. The church has never been ready to deal with me. They've never even given me credit, let alone been ready to deal with my ministry. This church I'm sorry, but the evidence is pretty clear to me. This church couldn't take my ministry. They couldn't be accountable to my ministry. Balaam would have been destroyed over the last 2 or 3 months. I would have gone after Balaam like you can't imagine. This church isn't healthy enough even to have a conversation about Balaam, let alone do the work. You know, I can just see straight through this. God never allowed me to get any type of credit whatsoever because my ministry might have had some traction, and then the church would be accountable to my words. You know, this church being accountable to my ministry is a real problem at this point. I don't think they could have ever been accountable to my ministry. So it makes sense Trump stole my ministry, and my ministry went to some guy in the White House who doesn't have a lot of spiritual authority over the churches and doesn't really have a lot of ammunition against the churches. He's just a guy who's just going to grab the Bible and quote a few verses here and there, and that's basically what the church can take. The church couldn't take my ministry. They couldn't take it 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 25 years ago. This church could never take my ministry. So I could see straight through me losing my ministry. I don't see a church that's accountable. I don't see a church that could even bear my ministry. So I could see straight through it. I never got credit for my ministry. I never had any connections. No one in this church ever dealt with me properly. It was just games on top of games on top of games. And so, you know, it makes sense that my ministry went to someone else and I lost my ministry because I don't see any accountability in the churches in order to do the work. In other words, I don't see people with faithful hands and bodies that are able to actually do the work. It's almost like I'm hiring you to do construction and your body's not strong enough to climb a ladder. You know, sorry, you're going to be fired within the first 3 days. If I hire you to do construction and you can't climb a ladder, you're fired within the first 3 days. Or if you can't carry wood, you're fired in the first 3 days, because that's what we need. I'm sorry, this church has never been equipped, has never been qualified, and has never been prepared, and is not in a position to deal with my ministry and to deal with me as a minister. They never have been. So it just makes sense that this calling is being stolen away from me, because the church is basically amateur and I'm advanced, I'm professional. And even though I lost my ministry, that doesn't change the fact that I was never an amateur minister. I was always a good minister. It's just this church just is amateur and they're not ready for my ministry. And they never have been ready for my ministry. So rather than God calling them out on being amateur and humiliating them, He allows me to get humiliated and fall, and then He allows my ministry to be stolen, and then He ignores me and never communicates with me, and then He never deals with me, and He doesn't allow me and my spouse Carly to have any comfort or strength. And He allows everything to be stolen, and He allows the church to rejoice in it because they're amateurs, and He allows Trump to take the calling so he could just sit there and hold a Bible and not put any pressure on the church because they're not ready, because they're amateurs. And then here I am, I have a fall, but I'm an expert minister, and I can't do anything. So I could see straight through this. I never got credit for being a minister. The work never got done. I never even got to first base with the church. I never even got to minister to this church. I never even got to talk to them. I mean, my ministry's gone, and they were never accountable to my ministry for a second. I could see straight through this. This church is just a joke. This church is so amateur that they don't even have the ability to take a medium minister, an average minister. They can't even take an average minister, let alone someone like me. So I got demolished because this church is completely amateurish, and this church is just a joke, and they don't really have the ammunition to do the work. The work I've been wanting to do for 25, 30 years. This church still doesn't have it in their heart to do that type of work. Like I said, they got Trump holding a Bible, just looking at them. That's basically what they can take at this point. So I see straight through this. I was never given credit. I was never really given my shot. As a minister, I was never given my shot to do work. And the way I see it, the reason I was never given a shot to do the work is because the church is horrifically evil. The church is horrifically amateurish, and they're just fleshly. They're just a really fleshly, sinful church. And so I couldn't do my ministry because they just weren't qualified to even deal with me on any level. So like I said, I see straight through this. The church never wanted to do the work, so there's no need for a minister of my caliber.